Welcome to Make the Future, a discussion about future trends, technologies, and their implications for the world. We are coming to you from all over the world. I'm Michael Curry, an independent software developer and entrepreneur from Canada, currently living in Thailand.
I'm Daniel, a mathematician and social impact enthusiast from Munich, Germany.
Hi, I'm Parnyan Varakatan. I'm originally from Iran and currently live in Bay Area. I'm entrepreneur and I'm also interested on AI and super intelligence, neuroscience.
Hello everybody, I'm Giuseppe Romano. I'm from Italy and I work in computational science, and as a side hobbies I have interest in shared economy and how to simulate humans and how to put people in touch with each other.
And today's topic, the social implications of the sharing economy. The sharing economy is an economic system in which assets or services are shared between private individuals, either free or for a fee, typically by means of the internet, like Uber, Airbnb, TaskRabbit, Lending Club.
Shared economy as a concept is disrupting the lobbies in many situations. If you think that Airbnb net worth is higher than Marriott chains hotel, we should take a moment to think what the future implications are. What we think is established has been disrupted by companies run by few people. So now two guys can disrupt a billion worth company. This is happening, and this is going to be even more powerful in the future when the platform for programming are becoming even more easy to use and more accessible to the wider pool of scientists and developers. In my hometown in Naples, to be a cab driver, you have to have a 100,000 worth license that typically people inherited from their parents. So now Uber is changing everything. So what is happening is that everybody can give a ride to everybody. So the problem is that now the cab drivers are very upset about that and producing in the streets, and they're sometimes even violent because they don't want to give up on their privilege. We can blame a little bit of Uber for being too disruptive. If you want to introduce a new technology like that, you had to talk to whoever was before. So that's why just recently Uber came open to pay cab drivers for the decrease in the price of their license to compensate them and to help them transition to the new setting. So what do you guys think? It's good. So when a new technology like that comes up, do you think that it should be totally discontinued for what the past was, or we should be open to help people who were into that kind of setting and that kind of job and to revolutionize their lives and with no pain for them and their families?
So I guess this Uber effect you're talking about is something that's not only in your hometown. I think in most parts of Europe it was a pretty large scream out by the cab drivers. And also in Argentina, they often become violent. The taxi drivers would call in Ubers to beat his car up and him up, and then you could, as an Uber driver, which wasn't serviced by Uber, call in Uber to get you out there, and they would pay for the expenses caused by this. And the question is, I kind of know what Michael will say about this, that free market will regulate itself and it will cause cab drivers to, adapt in some way. But it depends on how far we look in the future, because for now, if you think about all people who wouldn't have a smartphone, they, if we would only have Uber now, they would want to have an Uber to the airport without knowing that there's maybe a big concert nearby, and would need to, pay a shitload of money. And so this is, I think, why taxi driving is a very regulated business. Cab drivers and the German government was really upset about Uber coming in Germany as well. Yeah.
The real justification for lodging rules and livery rules to protect the people that are using these services, it's possible you could be in an unsafe taxi, in a taxi that drives you somewhere and kills you, or maybe something far less bad like just steals your money or rips you off or is smelly or whatever, right? Unsafe drive. But now we have the internet that provides more information about the taxi you're about to enter than you were able to get before. So before you needed the long arm of the government to prevent them from ripping off customers, but now it is available on the internet how reputable a given taxi driver is, so we can avoid that without the government ever having to step in between the relationship between the passenger and the taxi driver. And I feel like a lot of these regulations are no longer relevant. New technology and new information that's available to people.
So I want to talk about two things. One of them is about regulation, and the other one is about the sharing economy concept. Uber, when initially started, I was in a talk that was Ali Partovi explained that Uber initially wanted to follow up all the regulations. So they started with limousine car, and they wanted to have like some specific car that you can order, those like black cars that you can order Uber from any place. And then Lyft came along and they had the concept of using any cars, doesn't matter whose car is that. Actually, the funniest part that Uber keep noticing the government and State Department to sue against Lyft. Travis, they've done like many times sue against Lyft because of breaking laws, and then they see that nobody do anything about it. So they said, okay, we are going to be against market. Okay, sure. And then they started to actually providing that, adding this feature that anyone can drive Uber. And that was the main reason of why Uber it's become a skill like in a very high rapid rate. That's one part. And then the other one, we talk about the concept of free market. But I really think our organization goes towards more decentralized like a structure in many ways. However, the whole platform has become really monopoly. Uber competitors relatively less. It's not like hotel or small businesses that you provide lots of like, even like hotel chain. But I guess Uber is provide like more monopoly in the global market, and they structure the system that can provide those monopoly. But the question though, like how we can structure such a this system into other market or other part of the world, because those people or those places do not have that capability of providing monopoly structure or organization, because they cannot go to lots of other or enter into many different markets. And I guess that's against kind of the idea of free market, or at least the concept of free market. It's going to completely change in next decade from what we have already defined or envisioned.
Can I quickly throw in? I don't know too much about like why Uber succeeded so much, but I guess it depends on who you ask, because I often heard, for example, that Uber was Uber was able to become so really successful because there's also like a very limited amount of cabs in San Francisco, so there was a really like a little supply. And also, if you talk to, like, I've heard like talks from Uber where they always say that they're like live supply and demand calculating algorithm is like their main success reason. So I'm not sure if we can pinpoint it to one reason only. I don't know if anybody knows more about this. I'd be interested in that. And wait, what was it you said last year about the monopoly situation? I think like intrinsic, like you can think of like Uber and those sharing economies like marketplaces. Usually, Uber is a marketplace for like connecting drivers and people who wanna like be transported. And I feel like this tends to become like as a consumer, you don't want to have multiple marketplaces. Like you don't want to have like 3 apps for your ride. You don't want to. You just have one app and then you want to connect there. So there's kind of like a free market going on, or it might be dependent on the marketplace in that marketplace. But like the market of the marketplaces, I don't know how exactly that will turn out. And also my question to Giuseppe, who said in the beginning that this is how the social impact it will have, because it's dominated by very few people. The question is it only dominated by the few people having like the company, or is it also dominated by, or like how much power do the people, do the users have, or do the, the people who offer their services have in those marketplaces?
One of the kind of concern I do have, it's, for example, I've done recent research about independent contractor that Uber considered drivers as independent contractor. And because of that, many of drivers, they don't get health insurance, they don't get paid sick job, they don't get many of benefits that the current job they provides for them. However, majority of them, they are really interested about like flexible time scheduling that they can have. But I guess, like, for example, we provide lots of new like concern, like for example, health insurance, like of others, like drivers, like what's happened with them. And I guess we need to kind of also come up with new approach and to solve this problem, because we cannot really fight against scaling of Uber. So I guess that would be kind of like concern I have. There's many different concerns, but how we can actually like structure technology in the sense that like solve many of those implications, because we cannot stop technology for growing forward.
Yeah.
So how's it going, Giuseppe? Is this going the way you want? Go ahead.
Yes. This is very interesting discussion. I just want to reiterate the concept of transition. Okay, so because as Spania said, we can't stop this. Okay, this is happening, and this is going even faster. So it's going to be disruptive in many ways. Okay, so now we just have to think about how can we prevent this from destroying lives. Okay, because I understand that as Michael said, having a regulated market for this, okay, has given privilege only to few people, okay. But now we all know that this is wrong, okay. But we can now tell them that they don't have that privileges anymore, right? It's complicated because they built a lifestyle on it. They shape their families, okay, for this. Even if it was based on a wrong concept, they already did it. So we can now take it back. So on one side, we can't slow down progress. So what we can do is have like a dedicated department in the government, department of transition, I would say, from a non-digital to digital dominated life. This is what we need, a transition. We have like that for women, for example, right? So, for example, in Italy, we all know that Italy is a male-dominated country. It is horrible, especially the southern part. Now, for some time, we had a Ministry of Equal Opportunity just to level up and to give more power to women to level up with men. So now we need something similar for across ages and eras, right? From the old era and new era, and we need to have a transition. And these are socialist things, so only the government can do it. It's not for profit. So this is what I think. We need to take care of those people. Okay.
So Giuseppe, I like your idea. I feel like you're addressing the humanitarian consequences of the sharing economy. Like you say, taxi drivers, all they were doing was buying into a system that previously existed, where you needed to get all this fancy insurance, buy a license, sign up with a taxi company, and now they find that all that money, for example, in New York City, the price of a taxi medallion was pushing $1 million US to buy the license to drive a taxi. And so you can imagine what you would feel like if you mortgage your house and you borrow from your family and you team up with two other guys to buy a taxi medallion, or buy one off of a retiring taxi driver. And then a year later, the value of these medallions plunges by 50% because some upstart bunch of frat boys at Uber decide to just start a business and ignore all the regulations. So I can completely understand the frustration when you're complying with all the rules and some other company is ignoring them. Now, we can all agree that the rules make no sense and shouldn't be there. But I can totally sympathize with the existing company's frustration when they say, look, we're complying with the rules, so we shouldn't be the ones that are punished. It should be a level playing field for everyone. But I think where I differ is, whereas the incumbent companies in many countries want the same rules to apply to Uber and Airbnb and other companies, I would say let's get rid of the rules in the first place. If we don't need them anymore because the internet provides us with enough information that we don't need special rules protecting consumers from being scammed by unscrupulous bed and breakfasts or unscrupulous taxi drivers, then let's just scrap the rule rather than make the same bad rules apply to everyone. Beyond that, I was going to say, Giuseppe, that although you're very good to say we need a Department of Transition that will address the humanitarian consequences so the taxi drivers can have adjustment assistance, I think it doesn't address the political dimension of this, which is that it's not really the individual taxi drivers and hotel staff that are protesting these rules. It's the companies, the taxi companies, the hotels that are protesting. When companies have the most power, like they do in Spain, for example, they can lobby the government to keep the sharing economy out. But in countries where consumers have more power, the government will not listen to these lobby groups and will permit the sharing companies. And I'll just say one last thing.
Can we say whose fault it is for it being this way now? For like, who should they be angry at? Because right now they're angry at the companies, the disruptive sharing economy companies. But actually, what I think is a really cool and valid point, that people feel betrayed because they had a system which were made attractive for them by the government. So maybe it's just, like the fault of the government providing those regulations, making it so attractive, and now the government is really against against those companies, because to deal with their with their maybe badly or implemented regulations, who might have been valid or a good idea earlier, but right now not anymore with the efficiency of the internet. What do you think about that?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you, unfortunately, Daniel. So can you summarize your point? Yeah.
It's very hard to follow you because the quality of your mic is not best. So can you?
It's weird because it was good earlier. Yeah, it was good earlier. Sorry, Giuseppe. Yeah.
Can you summarize, please, for us?
That's interesting. Maybe I should limit background processes, because right now I closed everything else besides the Hangout window. But anyway, so my question was like, who should they be angry at? Because it was like maybe also restating the fact that that was the government's fault to make this system so attractive for them by regulations, or this market's attractive for taxi drivers. So they should now be angry at the government, maybe. And the government right now
the question is
angry.
Whose fault? Whose fault is your question, right? Is it the government's fault, or is it I don't know who else's fault? Yeah.
Because what you were saying went in the direction that it's the government's fault, and right now it's trying to deal with its mistakes kind of by like trying to keep Uber outside, for example.
Yeah, I guess I would say, if I can answer that just very briefly, and other people can weigh in too, in my mind, it is the government's fault for imposing these rules in the past and then not adapting as new technologies came on stream. Now, this is very normal for the laws to lag the technology, but nevertheless, I think it's even worse though, because I'm actually really embarrassed about Uber and Lyft, because I don't know if you guys are going to believe me, but for 10 years I've been saying taxi drivers, or the whole taxi industry, is ridiculous. In Calgary, we had 3,000 licenses for taxis, and it was a fixed number that had been set in 1981 and had never changed, never been moved up in 30 years. And yet, of course, the population of Calgary during this time multiplied by 2 or more. So, of course, every time city council comes around to debating should we raise the number of taxi licenses, the average person in Calgary doesn't show up to protest. Instead, the taxi lobby, the guys that have the most to lose from having more taxis on the road, of course, they show up and they say, no more taxi licenses. And so no more taxi licenses got issued for 30 years. And it's very similar in other cities throughout the world. And I was just pulling my hair out about this fact for years, saying, my God, this is ridiculous. Somebody needs to change these rules because we're paying way too much for taxis. The taxi drivers don't even benefit because they just have to buy these ridiculous medallions that cost huge amounts of money. So nobody benefits from this system, really. And I was saying this for years, and I thought the solution was political. I thought you had to go and lobby the government and change the law. But Uber just showed up, as I say, a bunch of frat boys that just said, you know what, we're going to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And that's what they did. They just started running their business, just like Parnian says, right? And they found, well, hey, the government doesn't even enforce this rule very strictly. So we're just going to run our business. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I could have started Uber, but I didn't. That's all I'm trying to say.
I guess I know.
Yeah. Daniel, you were.
And you know what? Any of us could have, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Giuseppe.
No, totally. I mean, that was so what you're saying, and what I also feel like. I mean, there were movies made about this basically. So it was a really, predictive process also for the government to change something, but they didn't because it kind of worked, I guess. I don't know, but you said that you were looking for a solution on governmental side, and I guess. Kind of the solution was in the sentence where you said instead of asking for permission, they asked for forgiveness because that exactly, was where they outplayed the government and where then eventually the government needed to kick in, or at least in other countries. In the US, it's always, I think that's a feature, but also it has an up and a downside. Also in the pharmacy industry, for example, I see this more critical in the US that you often rather ask for forgiveness.
I think that it's all about the quality of our politicians. When sometimes you don't have a very successful career, you just go to politics, right? And so notoriously those people, at least in Italy, are just people who have connections, the right people, right? And they don't want to work, for example, a traditional job. And this is what is happening in Italy. We have the quality of our politicians is so low, it's so embarrassing low. You can't imagine. Okay, it's horrible. And I think that they don't even understand, right, the potential impact of shared economy. And most of our politicians didn't even go to beyond Italian's border. Okay, they don't know what's happening around the world. They're old-fashioned and they don't get it. Okay, this is horrible. So I think that to get this more on the way of development, we really need to change the way we do politics. And this comes to a decentralized organization, as Panion always talks about. And this is true. So we need to change that. Otherwise, we're going to have problems even more. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Michael. I guess we can do something. We can start sharing our ideas, because I guess and the idea could be a good idea of how we can implement sharing economy within different industry. Because I guess if we have more bureaucratic law system or structure, or many different ways to deal with those more open and decentralized organization, so there's not a connection between these two. So I guess we need to find decentralized organization within many different systems. So I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts and or business ideas about changing the current system in many different aspects. One of the idea I'm looking for is about education and bureaucratic a structure that we have within universities and university lobbies. and how we can have independent research, or how we can independent more like degree or like social norms. Because I believe, like as we discussed, Uber changed many of different social norms within the society, and I believe we going to break down many different social norms within the society too.
Basically, Parni, you're asking, let's come up with some business ideas that will help to change the government's mind about some of these sharing economy regulations. I just want to take a step back to answer that question. Back to what Giuseppe was saying. He was saying politicians in Italy, they're not necessarily the best people. They're ignorant. Some of them haven't been out of the country. They're not the best people to be making the regulations about this fast-moving industry. I'd like to take a different view of this. Political science models politicians' decisions as basically a tension between interest groups. If you have one interest group that's lobbying you heavily, like the taxi lobby or the hotel lobby, and you have another group that isn't organized and isn't meeting you on a regular basis and giving you political donations and organizing rallies on your behalf, like consumers or people that use hotels or people that use taxis because they're not organized, then you're naturally going to agree with the group that's organized. So in my mind, the solution to the political opposition to the sharing economy is to involve as many interested groups as possible in that sharing economy, is to engage as many groups like these taxi drivers and hotel owners and get them interested in the profit implications of the sharing economy. So if we had a business that let hotels more easily sell their rooms, or if we let a business that let taxi drivers use an Uber style service to sell their services, some kind of business like that starts to pull in the people that are the losers of the sharing economy and make them into winners also, I think we would get rid of the political opposition to the sharing economy.
No, this is a very good take, of course, of this topic. But still, I think we need some high-quality politicians at least to listen to those groups, right? But yeah, so maybe we need the improvement on both sides. You're totally right.
I've also done lots of research before on decentralized autonomous organization. One of the main opponent of such a structure is blockchain economy or blockchain structure, but it's not defined currency, for example, as one of those decentralized organization. It's also about the way we do the government, the decision making process, the for example, education, I guess, all going to change rapidly. And the main argument, for example, about our voting system, I guess we also going to structure new voting system, because the current voting system, it's very, very inefficient. It requires lots of time, and also it requires lots of divisions and lots of people who are just many people job is just to facilitate the process, which is structured in very, very inefficient way. And we can provide a platform that provides a faster and easier way to connect for example, different parties or different people in very fast speed. So we don't require, for example, if I want to study take course in one university, right now I have to go to my school, I have to find the courses, I have to talk with my advisor, and I see which one is matched with my degree, which one is not matched with my degree, and then find the course that finally what I want to take. And probably it's not exactly what I require to take, because I have to take this course because it was a structure in this way, because that's the society provide the metrics of success or getting degree in many ways. And we have many of those metrics, which doesn't make any sense in many ways. And what I believe though, like we're going towards new social firms that, okay, I can take any course that we can see right now in any structure, and I can do what like course I like. I can find any like professor I would like, and also I don't need to pay actually that much money, and I don't need to have my advisor or like so many different like people to just help me to pick up one courses which I'm not like at the end interested. So I can just like go online and find like one course which is really fast. So what I'm trying to say that we're going towards more like a structure that is really, really fast, and we don't like deal with lots of those bureaucratic like a structure. And in terms of government that Giuseppe like described, I believe that we're going to have new voting mechanism that is very instant, and we can change like people or bring people that are going to like control or lead on a specific like domain at like a same like time instantly. And also the other things I believe though, we're not going to have those like hierarchy level of, okay, I have the Senate, I have this like state policy, I have those people are all voting until to find like one super leader to kind of govern us in many aspects. But one thing we do though, instead of having those specific leader, we have, I call it like platform leaders, a platform that structure like decentralized like mechanism or system or marketplaces in many other words or format. But those platforms are things that leading us. So I don't think we're going to have like very centric hierarchy leaders, but I guess we're going to have many different platforms or a structure in our society that those are more decentralized, but they have power to govern or control us, or us in other sense. Maybe we do have more like kind of have power to have more free will or individualism in many sense.
Nice.
I think what you're talking about is like partly at least like a very, because of, you know, like the internet, you have very efficient markets, so you get information like very, very quickly. And what you're talking about kind of is like a very like hyper democratic process, you know, like instead of like voting for representatives, you basically like crowd vote for, or like how do you say that, like crowdsource your opinions and decisions. But the question is, I don't know, like I think that's also like you know, highly critical if you look at recent examples of where people are allowed to vote. If you look at Trump, if you look at Brexit, you know, and also in Europe in general, like with the refugee crisis, people are just not informed that well to, you know, like media, for example, has a lot of control, you know, like good storytellers have too much control to influence the masses. And so eventually we will end up with a democracy who will be dominated by people who tell good stories, like Trump, like, you know, like those people, and like who connect to the masses, who using or abusing like certain problems. So that might be, I don't know, an issue.
That was my main argument though. Like, I guess the current structure we have, that's why lots of people, they can like take advantages of. But we're going, I don't know how much, for example, you know about smart contracts or Ethereum or other structure, that I don't think we're going to have one centric like leader that kind of govern us in many aspects and affect our lives. Like, for example, I'm really like stress or freak out in many ways because I'm from Iran. Trump is like become president, and my life, my visa, my like lots of circumstances that I honestly cannot control like at all. I cannot live in the way I want because I cannot control it. Like, it's not out of my hand. I cannot do anything. I don't have voting power. I have nothing whatsoever to change my circumstances because lots of them there are like doesn't ruled by me, and we call it like, oh, major.
But
Sorry.
that's, like I could look at, like at a country which I don't like and say, well, why don't I have influence over that country? I mean, that's kind of, like our system that you need to be a citizen, and the US chose to like make it hard for people to get a visa and everything. And like there I don't know if there need to be some bounds, but at least right now there are, and that's what. But just as a quick side comment, do you know this guy from Singularity University from Buenos Aires who he's actually like doing something like that for legal decisions, like for instead of having a jury, like crowdsource this? Do you know him?
I do not. But one of the things I wanted to say, like, we're going to have more social forms or structures that are going to be reflect our opinion in our like a smaller group, and kind of we can like collectively we going towards like collective intelligence or like crowdsourcing in general, but I guess we are also going more decentralized like networks. There are like kind of many different networks or like a smaller subgroup. They're all connected with each other, but they have their own like interests. So I'm not necessarily going to be ruled by Trump or am like, for example, infected by Trump if I want to like live with many different like parties. So I really like the concept of, for example, a smart contracts. And I guess we're going to have like a social groups or like a small groups. We probably have like better, like we can structure the mechanism or organization that, or policy makers that is reflect our opinion. So we don't need to have a very hierarchy like leaders that control us or what we want to do. And I guess our social format is going a lot on that. Like, for example, we don't have like some politicians that are not really represent our interests, or we don't have power to lobby, or I guess the whole political system in general is going to be changed in many ways in future, because the whole process, you go into school, study politics for a long time, and then you don't aware of many different like ideas or what's happening. And if you want to, you need to have that degree about like a specific things. And then finding those people or that with those interests is like really small and doesn't really represent our ideas. And those people, they have money, then they have better like power to lobby, and that doesn't show the interest of the people that could not like really represent their values or their interests.
Yeah, I'd like to, if I can just take a step back for a sec. I think maybe the way to connect Parnian's ideas about direct democracy and a hierarchy of various direct democracies is to say basically, Giuseppe threw out the question, or threw to us the question, how can we make the sharing economy possible in places where there seems to be political opposition to it? How can we make it possible? And Parnian's solution is to introduce a more direct democracy approach using technology that could potentially lead to the political outcome that we want here. So that's an interesting approach, and we could talk for a whole other episode on political systems and how best to make political decisions, for sure.
So I think it's good for us, but it might be bad for the main actors in the shared economy. For example, the Uber drivers, they are clearly underpaid. I know that this is hard because they have to do it. Uber has to not to pay them much because they have competitors like Lyft. There should be another improvement on this side in the long term. So I think that now who is paying most of the price is actually the Uber drivers. So it's good for us, for citizens, but workers, it could be cumbersome.
How I like to think about this sharing economy is it shifts fixed costs to variable costs, and it makes markets much more efficient. So that will both have very interesting effects on like companies will outsource more and more, will have less fixed costs, will have less margins. The efficiency of the market is generally a good thing. I don't know what happens if it becomes too efficient, because then, as I said earlier, with the voting systems, there's also problems, but I think it's generally a good thing, and I'm really curious to see how it will turn out.
In this elevator pitch battle, each of us will give one business idea in less than 30 seconds. Then, we will each vote on the best idea. Round 1, Michael. Okay, here's my idea. Software that rapidly removes ums and ahs with deep learning in real time during conversations over Google Hangouts. It could also eliminate coughs and other tics, so you don't need to mute your microphone. It would make you sound smarter.
I'm thinking about the target, and that makes it kind of funny. Like, would you sell it to people wanting to sound smarter, or will you sell it to people who are annoyed by the other party?
Round 2, Giuseppe.
A software that combines augmented reality with shared accommodation. You landed to a new city, no internet connection. You point to a building and you can see all the available rooms in that building. And then you approach the building, you ring the door, and the owner comes down and you can find an agreement with him and have a new accommodation.
Each of us is solving our personal problems. This is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess that's how you come up with solutions, right? Because you try to think of problems or things you don't like. I thought it was funny that Giuseppe's solution is high tech, and then it ends with, and then the owner comes down, and you can like. I feel like the last part could also be outsourced to machines, basically.
Round 3, Parnian.
The huge problem right now which exists is when you buy like the accommodation or property in one place, you cannot relocate or move in other place easily. So the idea is to buying a property or license that you can live in any other places with similar range like property. So pretty much I can buy license but live in many different countries or many different places.
Like a timeshares.
Yeah, it's like buying property for exchange. So you just like have $100,000, but I can live on some price range. I give like new type of license or ownership, but I can live in many properties in that range anytime in around the world. Like I can exchange my properties.
It's like a real combination of sharing and owning economy, because you pay for a license, you own a license in how you would have owned an apartment, but you just like share your property with others.
Exactly.
Round 4, Daniel.
My idea is about low-cost home repairs. So if you have a problem at home, you submit a problem. You will be sent a toolkit instantly in like an hour, including a glasses equipped with a camera. And from there, we can or the company can remote control you. And using AR, you will have extra information about the stuff you're repairing at that moment. And an expert will see what you see and let you know what to do.
Yeah, we should extend it to medical things.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, home medical repair. That sounds very...
Particularly for emergencies.
All right, so it's voting time, people. Now we have to decide on the best idea. Is it the and ah remover? Or is it Giuseppe and the augmented reality apartment previewer? Is it Parnian's idea of Airbnb for timeshares? Or is it Daniel's idea of augmented reality discount home repair? Parnian.
Michael.
Giuseppe.
I vote for Daniel's idea. So
everyone has on this.
Great, guys. We are great. It's perfect.
That's cool. Okay, that's a good end.
Guys, I want a world with no winner or loser. So to me, this is great.
Thank you, everyone. This was really fun. I had a great time.
Yeah, that was great.
Have a good day. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.